What is up, everyone? It is Diecastbuffet here again. Guys, we have a special diecast in the studio today. It is Dale Jarrett's 2001 UPS Flames Ford Taurus. This was one of the coolest paint schemes of the early 2000s that was only ran once at the inaugural Kansas Speedway race. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at it. All right, fellas, rotating base out of the studio, and look at this car. So, if you weren't a fan of the 2000s era in NASCAR, you might not have seen this paint scheme. As I mentioned, it only ran once, which is really shocking with how popular this car was. They did a Darlington throwback to it in 2023 with Carson Hocevar's truck in his final full-time truck season, I believe. Yeah, it was his final one, 2023, because he was a Cup rookie in 2024, I believe. So this diecast here was very much overproduced, which is why we're going to be opening it up. You know how that goes. I don't like to open up the non-overproduced cars. But sometimes people mistake this car for being a 2002 as it was released, I believe, in early 2002 or maybe mid 2002. I have no idea exactly when this was released, but it was ran at the fall Kansas race. Back in those years, they did promotions, so maybe the Winter Circle edition of the car wasn't out before the race. Maybe they had that one delayed for whatever reason, and maybe they only had like the hood opening versions, the club cars, the 124s, X, Y, and Z at the racetrack. I think the action, I don't know if you call it the Elite 164 or the hood open edition. I think it said 37,000 164s were produced. That's what the little production tag told on the little clamshell. So that just gives you kind of a rough idea how popular this car is. So this is the traditional Winter Circle packaging here. It is a little bit yellowed. You can't really tell from this until you look at the plastic with the white background there. So this is a good one to open up. It's a yellowed packaging. And to be honest with you, with these yellowed packaging ones, it actually might be a good thing to open them up, because I don't know if it actually would damage the car sitting in a plastic clamshell that is already starting to tint. I don't know if that would actually affect the car. And from what I could see, the car looks like it's in fantastic condition. You do get a plastic hood, which is just so freaking cool, man. Love that. Again, nothing really going on much with the back packaging. This was the standard Winter Circle one. So I'm going to go ahead and carefully open this one up. I will be right back. All right, fellas, outside of the diecast packaging, brand new. And as I mentioned, it's overproduced, so no worries. This is, again, one of the best looking paint schemes for 2001. You probably remember this from the intro on NASCAR Thunder 2002. It had the UPS Flames car. And I always wanted this paint scheme. And I actually got it back in the early 2010s. I picked it up. And I was just really excited about that because I always wanted that paint scheme, man. I can't remember if this is on NASCAR Thunder 2003. I'm going to assume yes, because they had a lot of 2001 cars. But it is a really, really cool looking paint scheme. It ran at the Kansas race, and I believe it had a tire cut down or something, and it actually crashed, which is really unfortunate. You figured if it did wreck out in the Kansas race, they would bring it back for 2002, but they never did. I'm kind of shocked. They never ran this paint scheme again. And in fact, Dale Jarrett, I think, only had one alternate paint scheme in 2002, which was the Muppets car ran at Chicagoland. So that was a completely different era of the sport where they traditionally ran the same paint scheme. So when you had a car like this that was unveiled, everyone's running to go pre-order it at their local diecast shop or something, because it's just that freaking cool. It's got UPS right there on the hood of this car. You had the flames pattern right there. I think the cowl flaps here, or the intake, whatever you want to call this little portion, it's changed so much throughout the years. I believe this is actually manually painted, because you can see a little bit of yellow on the outside of it. So maybe they painted it with a brush, or maybe they had a little mold. They had a cutout and they just airbrushed it. I'm not too sure there. Looking at the roof of the car, just see if there's any like paint cracks or decal cracks, because I don't know how this car was stored with it having a little bit of a yellowed plastic dome to it. Kind of makes me wonder if there's any oopsie-doos with it. Now, there is some like factory flaws or something over here on the hood. It looks like maybe the clear coat was smudged or something, which, again, they made so many 164s. To put it in comparison, The average production amount right now is about 2,500 to 3,000 per 164, even for the most popular drivers. As I mentioned earlier in the video, 37,000 of the hood opening, it was either total concept line where it's like a hood opening and the whole body of the car comes off the chassis, whatever variant that was, it said 37,000 on there. Okay, Kevin Harvick's 2002 primary had over 60,000 produced. It just shows you how many of them are still floating around. Got Taurus right there on the front end. Now, this diecast mold is very kind of quirky to me because it doesn't look as realistic as I wish it would. I think Hot Wheels had the best Ford Taurus mold. That's just my honest opinion. This one, though, reminds me a lot more of the plate bodies because of the front nose of the car. If you look at a rear view camera shot during a Talladega race back in the Winston Cup days, the front end of the Ford Tauruses look very much like this. Very tall, but a little bit round. So I would say it's more or less kind of like a plate car, if you ask me. Got Moog, Clevite, Simpson, Edelbrock, Plastalock, 76, Wix air filters, 88. Robert Yates Racing. Go to the left side of the diecast, and again, I see a little bit of like dirt around the car. So maybe when this one was being produced in the factory, maybe they had like, I don't know, a little bit of grease or something. You never know, right? This car was produced probably maybe late 2001. Again, I'm assuming it was already produced before the car ran, but with it having 2002 on the box artwork, that kind of makes me think it might have gotten pushed back to early 2002, because you got to think about it. They have so many different paint schemes, so many different drivers, they can only physically put so much on the retail shelf. So they kind of have to put some of the paint schemes on the back burner, so to speak, to make sure distribution doesn't have gaps and consumers continue to have, die-casts on the shelf. This is back when NASCAR was the second biggest sport in the country, I might add. Got 88 right there. And this is one of the coolest things I have seen. The UPS logo is the jack post arrow. I know it's not perfectly centered, but because the die-cast mold's a little bit funky to the real car. But that is so cool. I love that. Got Ford Credit, Fleetwood RV, and Texaco. There we go. We want to race the truck. Arguably one of the most iconic slogans in NASCAR racing history. Got UPS, Coca-Cola, whatever the biff that is. UPS once again. Dale Jarrett signature. You have a Bootleg Cup Series logo. Bootleg Bud Pole Award. Got 3M Autometer. A whole bunch of other contingencies here. EA Sports. That's pretty cool. I don't see what was the other video game brand? They had Heat, which was made, I think, by Infogrames. I don't see Infogrames there. That's interesting enough. And you got Goodyear there. Now, this is kind of interesting. So some of the cars in the early 2000s, they ran a flat Goodyear logo, and then some of them ran the more traditional, which they use nowadays, the curved Goodyear logo. I have no idea why there was a difference. I don't know if it was just a style preference or there was something to it. Yeah, this is what I was talking about when I said the car looked like it had some dirt or grime to it. I don't think this is just the car aging. I really don't. It looks like there's even maybe a little bit of a hair there. Again, this thing was sealed, by the way. This was sealed. It was a little bit yellowed, but when you've seen so many different cars, you can kind of tell when stuff is like warped and it's stuck to the plastic. I don't see any on this packaging here. I don't see any areas that show like some of the decal wrap. I don't know. If I had to guess, this was one that just wasn't well produced in the factory. And I think that brings to another conversation here. A lot of people kind of have this idea that every single die-cast made back then was perfect. Let's just be honest. It wasn't. The most of them were, but there was always a few oopsie-doos. And what I've noticed is the cars that have yet to been opened up, they usually have flaws. Why? Because someone went to the store, they saw they had a goofy, screwed up decal, like that one right there, that W kind of being screwed up. Someone probably looked at that in a retail store back in the 2000s and said, I don't know about that, right? And there might have been 3 of these on the shelf. You're going to pick the best one. I do the same thing. If there's 3 of the same car on the shelf, I'm going to pick the one that has the best quality logos. So what I'm saying is when you buy these new cars, or they're made 20-something years ago, but they haven't been opened, there's a pretty good chance they're going to have flaws because they were not opened and bought for a reason. Go to the top of the car, you have the yellow 88 there, which is really, really cool. And you got the deck lid, which just has that cool flames pattern. You know, this was back in an era, as I mentioned, where paint schemes, man, they were such a big deal. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised they would do like a 10-minute segment on just an alternate paint scheme reveal back in those years. Like Rusty Wallace would have 2 alternate paint schemes for the entire year, right? A Harley Davidson car, Elvis car. You think about like Michael Waltrip, he might run 1 alternate paint scheme, that being the Pepsi 400 car. In those years, 30 out of the 36 races were almost always the same exact paint scheme, and then you would have some anomalies. Sure, like Ken Schrader would have a whole bunch of different sponsors in like a 2002 because he was sponsored by Mars. They're going to have a lot more brands, combos, the dog food brand that Kyle Busch had, what is it, Pedigree, X, Y, and Z. And one of my favorite paint schemes of the 2000s. Now, I don't have an exact photo to compare this car to in terms of accuracy. From what I can tell based off memory, the real car, I think, had almost reflective yellow. Like, if you look at the photos, and this might just have been film camera back then, but the yellow on the car from the photos, it's like so bright. So I don't know if that was just a reflection of the flash, the way the opacity and the contrast, you know, came out on actual physical film photography, but the yellow on the car looked almost fluorescent, like it was super bright. I've noticed this also on just normal short track cars back in the Winston Cup era. Like you could look at a Matt Kenseth 2003 car, and like the yellow on the car, sometimes the outlining to the numbers would almost be reflective when taking a photo of. And all the cameras back then, at least most of them, like the high res ones, they would just look, I don't know, a little bit different than modern day camera technology. So I don't know if it was the cars that were different in terms of the wraps, or it was just the technology they used to capture the images. So I don't know, but fantastic looking diecast. We're going to take a quick little look at the plastic hood that comes with this car. Fantastic piece. So I took a little brief look at this plastic hood as I was setting up the studio to do this review. And I'm looking at it. Keep in mind, this came out of a factory 25 years ago, okay? It's plastic. It is probably the same grade of plastic that you would get on a Christmas ornament, and you know how brittle those things are. This thing looks unbelievable for its shape. Keep in mind, the packaging is yellowed. So this saw sunlight, cigarette, whatever. It saw some sort of wear to it that can affect plastic and make it brittle, okay? Because these have not yellowed by themselves. If you store these things correctly, they're not going to yellow. Trust me, I've seen probably hundreds of them in my lifetime that have not yellowed from the 2000s. This thing looks in insane shape. I had a Casey Kane 2004 Rookie of the Year car, and I noticed that there was a few little scratches on the plastic. I couldn't tell if that was the plastic actually cracking, because it will crack eventually, you know, due to age, or it was actually a factory flaw. You can see a little bit of like some small scuffs here and there. I do think that is just the natural aging of the plastic, but regardless, it looks amazing. Fantastic shape, and the gloss texture on this hood is just awesome. I mean, could you imagine just having this in your little diorama, your diecast setup? It's so freaking cool, man. And yeah, you could easily attach a magnet. Like they did an amazing job with these hoods, because they put the little plastic notch here, and that way it gives you a flat area to put a magnet. You could glue it to it, gives you a little bit of an area. Just amazing stuff. And we'll compare the hood design. Pretty well spot on. I mean, all honesty, pretty well spot on. And it almost looks like the top portion is actually painted. You see a little bit of a gradient, and on the edge of it, you see kind of a, I would say maybe like a transparent yellow. It doesn't look as bright. That's usually a telltale sign it was actually painted on. So the fact that they would possibly hand paint or airbrush the freaking plastic hoods, insane levels of quality that is still hanging around for 25 years, pretty much. And yeah, look at the plastic of the actual car itself. I'm just saying, for a car that was sealed in this, look how clear the plastic is on the actual car. Insanity. Just shows you how amazing the quality is of these cars. Fantastic stuff. And oh yeah, I do see some paint chips that looks like they were touched up on the spoiler. That's unfortunate. The yellow on this car was probably hand painted because yellow is really difficult to wrap because it's a bright color, and if you screw it up, it's going to have overlap. Usually they hand paint this stuff, or they put it in a little metal mold that only has the rear of the car sticking out, and they just take an airbrush. Looks like they dropped it, maybe paint chipped it, or maybe they grabbed it with their hand and then they just went back and touched it up with like a small brush or something. Maybe that's why this is kind of screwed up there. Maybe they grabbed the car. Who knows? I have no idea. Thank you all for watching the video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And for all your new diecast shopping, make sure to check out Circle B Diecast. Use promo code Diecastbuffet over there. You can save on shipping, fellas. That is all for now. Diecastbuffet. Sign it off.